Hello, and welcome to This is USG, a video podcast by the universities at Shady Grove. 9 universities on one campus with great results. I'm Khademian, Executive Director of USG. In September of 2022, an article in the statewide publication Maryland Matters posted the headline, quote, "Season of Glass. Montgomery official preps for elevated role on council he helped reshape," unquote. The Montgomery County official referenced in the article is County Council member and Council President Evan Glass. And the council he helped reshape is the Montgomery County Council, which has expanded its membership and, following the election, is a much more representative body of the very diverse Montgomery County. A former CNN producer and longtime media communications professional, Council President Glass is chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee and a member of the Economic Development Committee that he initiated. He is a leader on housing affordability, transit equity, and on achieving Vision Zero, on addressing the climate crisis and clean energy initiatives, and ensuring that Montgomery County is economically competitive. Please join me in welcoming at-large council member and Montgomery Council President, Evan Glass. Evan, welcome.
Hi there. Nice to see you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. I like to start these conversations with some of your own personal journey to where you are now in public leadership. I've referenced that you were a journalist, you were a CNN, and I've also read that you had a really initiating foundational role in a nonprofit that gave many children, underserved children, access to all kinds of interesting media and video opportunities for telling their own stories as well. So you've had a really interesting journey. I'm wondering if you could tell us how you got to this point, what brought you to public service, and go back as far as you'd like in terms of the inspiration for coming into public service. This is not a typical thing that we do oftentimes. So how did you get here?
Well, life is a journey, and who am I and why am I here? Well, I grew up on Long Island, and my parents divorced when I was very young. And my mother quickly started working 2 jobs to provide for me. And that meant I was home alone a lot. I'm an only child. And so it was me and the television. And I watched a lot of TV. And I remember back in the early days of cable television, particularly one network, the cable news network, the first Gulf War was on TV for everybody to see. And here I was, elementary, middle schooler, I guess peculiar in some way that I was watching CNN and watching America fight a war halfway around the world. But it got me going, and it got me really into news. And I knew early on that I was a news junkie, and came down to Washington, D.C., to American University, and studied journalism. And I started a career at CNN that lasted 12 years. And while I was at CNN covering Congress, traveling the country, covering presidential campaigns and national politics, I moved here to Montgomery County. And I ended up moving to downtown Silver Spring right when the Discovery Channel building had just opened, and things were on the move. Buildings were being built, neighbors were moving in. And as I was walking to the metro to take the red line from Silver Spring to Union Station, where CNN was located, I had a hard time crossing the street. There wasn't a safe way to do it. And also the sidewalks were crumbling. And I thought to myself, I know how Congress works. I know how the federal government works. But who do I talk to in my own neighborhood about fixing sidewalks? And I worked with my neighbors. We formed a neighborhood association. And started advocating, and I started learning more about Montgomery County. And 15 years later, I am an at-large member of the county council. I am chairman of the transportation committee, and I'm currently president of the body.
That's a fantastic story. I so appreciate you sharing how you became an active citizen in that sense of taking on an issue and working with neighbors to do that. I think so much of our politics and our attention oftentimes does get focused at the national level and the big national politics and international politics, but democracy starts at the local level. And and is so vital. I wonder if you could just reflect a little bit. You were a journalist, you covered some of the biggest campaigns, you were out there covering Congress. A lot has changed in our politics over time. And I've often wondered how our politics will change in order to address the challenges we have. If we can't fix things at the national level because of our major divisions that we have, so much more of the responsibility is coming to the local level and to counties and cities to try to address some of these things. I'm wondering if you see that as well. I mean, you clearly have taken, bold steps in areas like climate change and around equity and housing. And I'm wondering if you see that as a trend as well, that we might actually see a shift in terms of the importance of our local governments in being able to address some of these bigger global issues.
I think that's a great question. And I was on Capitol Hill. I was in the House chamber a little after midnight, more than a decade ago, when Obamacare was passed, right? And big things are possible down in Washington, D.C. But more often than not, it is the things that we do in our own community that affect us. Every day we are either driving or riding the bus or the metro. Those are local issues.
Yeah.
We drop our kids off at school. Those are local issues. And we wonder why maybe there's an empty storefront at the strip mall, right? And those are local issues. And so we all look down on Pennsylvania Avenue and think that the White House and Congress are where everything is decided, but it's not Pennsylvania Avenue. It's Wisconsin Avenue and Connecticut Avenue, Georgia Avenue. We got a lot of state named avenues in our community, but that is where our daily quality of life is determined. And ultimately, that is the work of the council and of local government. When I was at CNN, I would sometimes leave the Hill early or the Bureau early at 7:30, maybe even 8 o'clock at night to rush.
That's early.
Sometimes that was early. And I would go to a meeting to talk about all of these different issues. And my colleagues and my bosses thought it was interesting. Okay, that's Evan doing his thing. But it fulfilled me. And also what's important is it was nonpartisan. We all know that sidewalks can sometimes be very controversial, but they're not Republican and they're not Democrat. And so that's why I was able to do that work. And I'll also share with you that when I left CNN, it was in 2011, and we were getting ready for a ballot initiative here in Maryland to pass marriage equality. And right after leaving CNN, I was asked by a number of state leaders if I wanted to join the board of Equality Maryland, which was at the time the state's largest LGBTQ rights organization. And I was unable, as a national journalist covering national politics, to get into those types of issues, legal or cultural issues. But no longer being a journalist, I said, yeah, let me do that. And so on election night in 2012, had I been at CNN, I would have been covering Mitt Romney's presidential campaign, and I would have been at his presidential headquarters in Boston. But instead, I was at the Marriage Equality Victory Party with my husband, which was a way better party, right? Because Maryland became the first state in the country to pass marriage equality by referendum. And it was really special, but that was really the first time I got involved in politics, and it came immediately after journalism.
What an incredible story, and what a great way to highlight the importance of local government governance and leadership as well. That's fantastic. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about your leadership of the council. This has been, in many ways, a very trying year with the budget and trying to cover all the expenses of the county. It's also such an exciting time because the council, which you have had a significant hand in shaping, is larger. It's grown by 4 additional members and has 6 new members, and it has now a significant number of women, in fact a majority of women on the council. And so a lot has changed as well. I wonder if you could highlight for us what stands out for you this year as something that you're the most proud of, something that really you feel really good about your leadership and your goals for the year, and maybe what are the more challenging things that you're working on as well?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head that this year has been a year of change in Rockville, that we do have this new council with a majority new individuals and a majority female. And it is fantastic. And I'm honored to be serving as president at this point in time, because it was only about 2-3 years ago where I proposed that we expand the council. There was a lot of public conversation about representation and making sure that everybody was fairly represented in our community. And I took the position that we'd had 9 members of the Montgomery County Council for 30 years, 9 members for 30 years. And during that time, our county's population had increased by 50%, 50. So rather than diminishing people's right to vote, but rather than diminishing representation, I said, let's expand it. Let's add 2 more members to the council. And the voters came through and not only supported that initiative, but we now have the most diverse council in our history. We have 11 members, 2 of whom are Black, 2 of whom are Latino. We have our very first Asian American Pacific Islander. I remain our first and only openly LGBTQ+, and we are a majority female. And so I think it is a beautifully diverse county and a beautifully diverse council as well.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about, in your role as president, I think there's, to have a very diverse, very representative body is fantastic. It is democracy in action. But of course, everybody has new agendas. You have new members who come on with different priorities. And so there's a lot of work, I would imagine, around trying to forge consensus or find majority support for key initiatives. Can you talk to us a little bit about your style, your leadership style, and how you approach this challenge of leading a very diverse council? The council's accomplished quite a bit. So how do you, as president, help to move the council along or find consensus points? What's your approach to that task?
So there are 11 members of the council, 5 of whom, including myself, had been here for 1 or 2 terms. And so we know how the body operates and how to get things done. And all of us have an interest in continuing to make progress. And then we just had 6 new members join who were energized and ready to make change and fulfill their campaign promises. And so there has been an incredible amount of energy at the council. And part of the council president's role is orchestrating it. I in no way discourage people from doing what they think is right. What I do is make sure that we have an agenda and a flow that can accommodate everyone's legislations, everyone's resolutions, but also be mindful of public input, public comment, and conversation, because there's an ebb and flow to this. We all have staff and we have individuals like the clerk who help manage our public testimony and the workflow at the council. And so it does take a level of coordination to be able to weave all those things together. But as a former journalist, I think if there's anything that I do extremely well, it's listen to people. And so I talk with all of my colleagues regularly. I speak to people in the community. I read my own social media and my emails, and I know what people are thinking. And I want to make sure that their thoughts are heard at the council. And that's really what I do as council president.
So I take from that a couple of key words. When you said orchestrating, which is beautiful, right? Many pieces to an orchestra, lots of different voices, but making sure they can all be heard, and with some harmony behind it as well.
I
which
like
is
that, the
fantastic.
harmony, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then, listening. That your leadership style is to really be a great listener, and that's so important in democracy today. I think we do a lot of nationwide you do a lot of shouting and not enough listening. So I think that's terrific. And I can see that you're very active on social media. I see you all over the county, listening and talking to people everywhere in the county. And that's fantastic. I think that's such an important role of the council, is to hear the residents and to try to turn that into meaningful action.
And you had asked in a previous question just about, kind of the rhetoric and the tone of politics. And with regard to listening, I'll share with you a story from my CNN days. You might remember back in 2008, there was a woman who said that Barack Obama was a Muslim, and John McCain told her she was wrong.
I remember that.
I happened to be there. I was in that venue, in that hall,
Wow.
which was just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I share that story because it was the beginning of, the internet misinformation age. And this woman had been told something, or thought she heard something, and asked John McCain, verified hero in our country. And he told her she was incorrect, and she was in disbelief. She didn't know what to do. I actually went up to her afterwards and said, "Hey, CNN would like to speak with you. Can you come talk to us?" And we did a live interview with her. But in this day and age, things have gotten so much worse, where if you try to correct someone or provide real information, they'll just push back. And not be in disbelief, but be in an argumentative manner and just take it to Twitter and social media. And one of the things I hope, and I work really hard at preventing here in Montgomery County, is that level of politics, where we got a lot of elected officials here. We actually are all Democrats, but that doesn't mean we all agree on everything. And the one thing I want us all to agree on is that we can disagree without being disagreeable. We don't need to start unnecessary arguments, but we state our case, state our facts, and we can vote different ways. And I hope that that continues here in Montgomery County, and that we're able to hold off some of those national trends in politics.
Yeah, again, I think leading by listening is a really important part of that, and giving people an opportunity to state their case and to state their position and to hear them well is very important. So thank you for that approach and that you bring to the council and to the county. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the county writ large. The county has grown significantly over the years, as you mentioned, we needed a bigger council and more representation as well. Montgomery County is one of the most diverse counties in the United States. In fact, a recent article identified, I think, 3 of our cities in Montgomery County as the top 3 most diverse cities: Silver Spring, Gaithersburg, and Germantown, which is really, what an incredible resource to have this kind of wonderful, rich diversity here in our county. But we're known for being a well-off county, but we have many challenges in this county as well, many gaps in equity, many difficulties that many residents face as well. And I wonder if you could share your kind of bigger picture thinking of the future of the county, where you see us going. You were the leader in an economic development committee, which we didn't have before. It was combined with planning and housing as well. So carving out economic development as a separate committee, giving it some leadership attention and focus, I think is really important in the county. Tell us about your kind of thinking of the future state of the county and the importance of that economic development committee as you think about the future as well.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack in that simple question there. But here in Montgomery County, we all talk about economic development and the need for good paying jobs and supporting our small businesses and supporting our immigrant businesses, right? Talk about diversity. About a third of county residents are foreign born, and we welcome them and their ideas and their culture. And in order to do that, we have to continue growing our economy. And at the council, there used to be a committee where economic development was discussed along with zoning and housing issues. But the discussion on economic development was dwarfed by the discussion on zoning and housing, which is a really big issue at the council. And so as we expanded the size of the council, I said, now is the time to create some change of our own here in the council. And I was able to create a brand new committee, the Economic Development Committee. And the purpose of that committee is, looking to attract and retain Fortune 500 companies, anchors in our community, anchors in our country, like Marriott and others. It's also to help support our small and immigrant businesses, our mom and pop businesses, and see what help that they need. Do they need help with permitting, with licenses, and with some of those additional fees, and what can we do to make their lives easier? And then also, it's a place to talk about economic disparities that might exist, the wage gap that continues to exist, and other disparities that are economically based, trying to create intergenerational wealth, recognizing that Black and brown families don't have as much intergenerational family wealth as white or Asian families. And so this is really the convening place, and it hasn't had enough conversation at the council, but the committee, once I was able to create it, got so much traction that it is now the largest committee at the council. It's the newest committee, it's the largest committee, and there were more people who wanted to be part of it who we couldn't accommodate. But it's been a wonderful experience. I love working with my colleagues on that committee, but certainly there's a lot more work to be done.
Yeah. Are you optimistic about the economic future of the county? Tell me how you're thinking about what comes next for the county. We have all kinds of interesting pockets of possibilities and opportunities, from the biotechnology industry to, of course, our thriving and large hospitality industry, but entrepreneurship is another area, and small businesses where the county has so much potential and promise. Could you share with us where you see some of the real opportunities from an economic development perspective?
I am extremely optimistic about Montgomery County's future and our economic success. And you correctly identified a number of the industries that are leading the way. The life sciences sector. Just a few weeks ago, I was at the grand opening of a new facility not too far from Universities of Shady Grove, right off 270. And it is a new wet lab where businesses can come in and utilize this space to continue their scientific endeavors. And we have a lot of this, and we have a lot more. Once as we capitalize off of the NIH and FDA and NIST and HHS, all of these federal agencies that protected us during COVID, not only protecting the country, they protected the world. And Novavax, right? All of these incredible businesses and federal partners are located here. So we need to continue utilizing them, building off of them, creating ecosystems around them. And USG is one of those partners that we're going to continue supporting you so that you can support the next generation of scientists and entrepreneurs and others who add to the creative and professional life here in Montgomery County.
So let's pick up on USG. That's great. Thanks for that nice segue. That's fantastic. Yeah, we here at USG, we do see ourselves as an important, vital part of the changing economy and the need to reach a much more diverse workforce as well. And so we see ourselves as a place of innovation where we can build pathways for learners who are lifelong and whose life experience may be much more fluid than those students who are able to go to a four-year university, right? So a student who has some family responsibilities, who has work responsibilities, who may be financing their own education and need to work some and go to school. And so we're really dedicated here at USG to figuring out how do we build those pathways that center the student experience and cater to the needs of students in ways that can grow the workforce in a really powerful way. If we continue to try to lean on and rely on kind of traditional education institutions, that's part of our answer, but there's a whole group of people who are not necessarily served or that can't necessarily attend a higher ed institution if it means 4 years of study. And so we're very dedicated to thinking more creatively about that with our partners and really trying to meet some of this workforce demand and reaching a much more diverse first generation community as well. I wonder, what are your thoughts on thinking more holistically in a kind of pathway manner, or you use the term ecosystem, talking about the different industries. I think that's exactly the right term to use, is ecosystems. It's not the workforce challenge is not just an education challenge. It's a partnership challenge with industry and with higher ed and with all of our partners in doing that. So I wonder if you could share your thinking on the ecosystem possibilities in the county, especially around education. We have some fine, wonderful institutional partners here, Montgomery College and MCPS. What are your thoughts on that ecosystem and how we might work better together?
Well, I'll share with you that I myself am a first generation college student. Neither of my parents nor grandparents went to college, and it was a tough situation, a tough process trying to figure out and navigate how to do the applications, but more importantly, how to pay for it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of soul searching and a lot of conversations, tough conversations around the kitchen table. And we made it work, and I took out lots of loans, and I, a few years ago, finally paid them back. But that's why, the opportunities that exist at Montgomery College and at universities of Shady Grove are just so critically important. And I think the other side of the coin is really within government and outside of government in the private sector, determining what jobs actually need college degrees or certain levels of college preparedness. Because I think that there are a number of jobs where we need some skills, we need some education, but doesn't necessarily have to be 4 years worth. Can it be 2 years? Can we increase the level of certificate programs that can be accomplished and achieved over a different time period with a different cost value? And I know those are things that you and your colleagues are all working on. And it's something that we in government, the Montgomery County government has 10,000 employees. There are a lot of people in Montgomery County who work for Montgomery County. And as there's natural turnover, we should be evaluating the criteria in which we hire people. So I think that is the larger ecosystem. It is the networks of job opportunities with with USG, with some of our private sector employers, with some of our government opportunities. And if there are not pathways that have already been created between USG and Montgomery County government, well, I now know the next thing I'm going to do once we end this Zoom, I'm going to look into it and make sure that we start creating or strengthening those relationships.
That's fantastic. Well, we are working with the county now on some of the leadership training and some of the leadership opportunities, which we're so excited about and so honored to be part of. And we do hope that we can just think more together about these pathways into government, because like yourself, a first generation student who found his way to leadership and public service, we need more and more Evan Glasses who can take on that kind of leadership possibility and who feel that the importance of democracy. So again, I want to thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for your leadership and all you're doing for the county. Do you have any last words you'd like to share with us? Maybe we could talk about democracy more generally, or about the future of Montgomery County. I'd love to hear any last words you have for us.
Well, so democracy more generally, if you are listening or watching this conversation and you are not registered to vote, or you have never voted, you got to change that. We need to make sure that your voice is heard, because if we don't hear from you, then we don't know what your needs are. And that's the only way for us to help fix your situation. You need to find individuals who are running for office, share your opinions, because I'll tell you, there are a lot of people who don't find value in public education. There are a lot of people who would rather have who would prefer to have different budget priorities rather than investing in public education, investing in a robust healthcare network here to make sure everybody is healthy and safe. And also, we work really hard to make sure everybody here is protected and seen for who they authentically are. You know, that's one of the beautiful things about Montgomery County. You can live as your true self, and we're going to protect you and support you. And as you look at the news, there are a lot of places in this country that they don't value that and they don't support that, but we do here. And so that begins with voting and by participating. And then, you know, I would say more generally that life is a journey, and it's a phrase that we started this conversation with. I grew up in a home with a single mom. I became a journalist. I worked with an after-school teen program, right, helping provide skills in digital media. And now I am a member of the Montgomery County Council. And you might not know what you want to do, and you might not know necessarily how to get there. But as long as you have a goal, as long as you're moving forward and making progress, you're walking in the right direction. And just keep walking, keep your head held high, and ask people for directions. That's really the best way to succeed in the path of life. And it's worked for me.
What a great set of advice and guidance and inspiration as well. Just as you learn to share the power of a story as a journalist, you also can share the very meaningful power of a story, your own story and others, and how important that is for inspiring people to vote and be part of this democracy here. So thank you so much, Councilmember Glass. We really appreciate your time today, and we wish you the very best in the challenges ahead.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you all do too.